What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel. That's Daniel Starkin. Daniel, we talked at the beginning of the week hoping for a 4-2 week. We got a 2-4 week. On a scale of 1 to 10, give me the panic meter number for you as we dive into the show today.
Yeah, the panic meter is still low. Like, we got to remember it's still April. So the panic, we're at a 1 or a 2. I'm not panicking at all. With that being said, though, it was not a fun weekend by any means. Like you said, we were hoping for 4-2. They went 2-4. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Padres. They could have easily won last night. I was at that game. Unfortunately, I had to sit through 5 hours. It was freezing cold. But yeah, it wasn't an ideal week. But with that being said, there's plenty of baseball ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we got a great show for you today. We've got Tatis and Bauer going back and forth on Twitter. We have maybe sign stealing. We have celebrations. We have new Dodger dogs. We have tons and tons to talk about. But I want to stay on that topic, Daniel, because as Dodger fans, we're on Dodger Twitter, we're on social media, we're tracking along with where people are at. And there's a sense in some people of panic. You know, we did our live show on Friday night. There were people freaking out about the Dodgers losing the first two. And yet, I think there's another group of Dodger fans that it's almost like virtue signaling in a sense of like, we're not panicked. We're not panicked. How do we
Yeah.
balance? Because on one hand, it's April. We shouldn't be freaking out. We shouldn't be saying the Dodgers suck. They still have the best record in the National League. And on the other hand, if there were concerns coming into the season, I think how is the bench going to perform was probably one. And the answer has been not good. I think some of the injury concerns and depth concerns in the bullpen we assumed would be okay. So far, those have not played out. So, in your opinion, how do we balance saying, hey, it's April, no big deal, but also saying, but there's not really obvious answers on the bench, and I'm not really sure how they're going to fix some of the stuff in the bullpen either.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's still just April. We got like 6 months before we're playing, games that actually matter that are going to decide if we win the championship or not. But with that being said, there are definitely legitimate concerns. The Dodgers straight up, did not play good
Yeah.
baseball over the weekend. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Padres. Those games were winnable. They probably, they definitely should have split
Yeah.
last night. They were up 7-1 in the seventh inning or whatever. You have to be able to hold that lead. But yeah, the Dodgers just didn't play good baseball. You alluded to it. Their bench was basically gave them absolutely nothing
Yeah.
this whole week. And when you have so many guys that are injured, that's just that loses you games right there when you only have 4 guys in the lineup that could produce, and even those 4 guys aren't
Yeah.
hitting well by any means right now. So that's that. The bench is definitely a concern, but I will say that's going to be alleviated a bit with some guys coming back in the next week or two here, so that should help. But yeah, another one is the bullpen, like you said. That was probably, we talked in the offseason about what the Dodgers' biggest weakness is, and we said the bullpen, and that's compared to the rest of the
Right.
roster, right? Not compared to the rest of the league. Like, around the league, the Dodgers still have a good bullpen, but when you compare it to their starting rotation, which I think again showed up this
Yeah.
weekend and did everything you could have hoped for, and their lineup when fully healthy, I think we both agree is fine. So I think the bullpen is probably the one thing that will need to be addressed, and especially now. With Corey Knebel, who we know is going to be out for multiple months now,
Yeah.
so that's a high leverage guy you lost. So that's some question marks that are going to have to be addressed. Probably not now, but sometime in the future.
Yeah, and we've got some mailbag questions at the end asking about trades and that kind of thing, so we'll get there. But I do think the bullpen's interesting because there was a moment in which we thought, oh, wow, the Dodgers have so much depth in this bullpen, they're going to have to send a couple guys to the alternate site who are good. And then
Yeah.
Gonsolin goes down, and then Knebel goes down, and then last night David Price seems to leave with the hamstring injury. And on top of that, some of the other guys, Dennis Santana, etc., that you maybe had hoped for a little bit more from, haven't really come through. So interesting there. And then you hinted at the bench. The bench has been a problem. Well, guess what? This week, the bench became the back half of the starting lineup. So it's
Yeah.
one thing when your bench is Matt Beatty and Luke Raley and those kind of guys. It's another thing when your 6, 7, 8 hitters are Barnes, Beatty, and Raley with the pitcher spot batting ninth. That's problematic, and it explains it. So let's get into the big series of the week. Obviously, the Dodgers and Padres play for the second time in 10 days, 7 games over that stretch. They're not going to see this team for like 2 months now, so we don't have to worry about the high stress. We can all sort of
Yeah.
decompress ourselves. But the Dodgers lose 3-4 to the Padres, and you hinted at it. Sunday was the key. The Dodgers had a 7-1 lead going into the seventh inning and did not win. A couple stats I'll throw at you. Here's 14 times Dave Roberts went to his bullpen in this series. 8 of those times, the reliever gave up a run. So more than half of the time, he went to the bullpen. Here's the list of relief pitchers who gave up runs against San Diego. Trinan, Knebel, Santana, Gonzalez, Price, Gratterall, Nelson, Clevenger. All gave up runs. Alexander and Jansen, the only two to appear and not give up a run. Alexander twice. Shout out to Scott Alexander. So that was the key. And we're going to talk about Dave Roberts in a moment because I've got some thoughts. But I do agree, before we get into Roberts, the issue on Sunday and most throughout the series was the bullpen. The bullpen was the issue. The bullpen blew a 6-run lead. Dave Roberts may not have extended the 6-run lead or done himself any favors in extending it, but the bullpen gives up 6 runs in 3 innings on Sunday. As you said, you were there. I have to imagine it was a pretty unbelievable thing to watch in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not gonna lie, I could kind of see it happening like as it was going on, even though like there wasn't really a big inning. Like you said, they were up 7-1 going into the 7th, and then I think the Padres scored like 3 runs and then 2 runs and then 1 or 2 to tie it up.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of slowly happening. I was just watching it all unfold before my eyes. And it was brutal. I mean, you got to be able to hold a 7-1 lead. I know it wasn't really the Dodgers, main high leverage guys. Like Gratterall is still working his way back. That was like his second or third appearance.
Yeah.
He's still in spring training mode as far as I'm concerned. David Price didn't have his best outing. Like you said, he hurt his hamstring. We're not sure how serious that is yet, but that's definitely an area of concern. Jimmy Nelson kind of figured it out, but it was too late. By that time, he had already, let the game get tied. So, not a good showing for the bullpen, but I also want to say the offense didn't really help them out either. There was so many times early in the game when they had, bases loaded, 1 out, second and third, whatever, and they just couldn't bring runs home. They ended up scoring 7, which should be enough to win, but they easily could have scored, 10, 11, 12 runs, and then they come away with an easy win there. So all around for the team, it just wasn't a good showing on Sunday specifically. Another thing was the inability to stop the Padres' base running, which I think that's also a huge concern moving forward because teams now have the film on that. Yeah. Like the teams know the Dodgers just cannot hold runners. I don't think there's a single pitcher on this staff that's good at holding runners. Like there's some that are okay, like Kershaw. Not too many guys steal on Kershaw. But other than that, like it was just a merry-go-round on the base pass, and you saw, in a close game, you can't afford to give away free bases like that. The Padres won because Tatis starts the inning on second and steals third, and then scores on a sac fly. Which, if he's at second, he doesn't score on that, and that's how the game was decided. So that's another legitimate concern. But yeah. Overall, the bullpen, just not great, not being able to hold a 7-1 lead there for 3 innings.
Yeah, and you talked about missed opportunities offensively as well. The team goes 3 for 17 with runners in scoring position. They leave 18 players on base. And when you look down the list, like Turner's 1 for 2, Seager's 0 for 1, Taylor's 1 for 2, Betts is 0 for 2. But here's where the depth comes in. Kershaw comes up 0 for 1. Barnes is 1 for 3. I believe he had twice that he got out with the bases loaded. Rios is 0 for 1. Peters is 0 for 2. Raley is 0 for 2. May is 0 for 1. So it's not just that
and even
go ahead.
Inside of all those offers, there's a lot of strikeouts where it's like if the bases are loaded with 1 out, you don't necessarily have to get a hit to drive in a run, but what you can't do is strike out.
Yeah. Raley strikes out twice. Peters strikes out twice. Barnes struck out once. May struck out twice. Kershaw obviously struck out. Noisy struck out. Rios struck out. So lots of those, I'm not saying those are all with the runners in scoring position, but you can see where it comes up, right? So I think that's problematic. But I do want to talk a little bit about Dave Roberts. And let me just get this out up front. You and I are not advocating. I'll speak for myself. I don't think you're advocating for this here. Nobody wants Dave Roberts to be fired. Nobody wants Dave Roberts to be fired. But again, there's this segment of Dodger Twitter where it's like you're not allowed to say anything negative about Dave Roberts. Like as soon as you question anything, it's, oh my gosh, how can we do this? And again, 2 things can be true at once. I can say it was the bullpen's fault we lost, and I can also say that Dave Roberts did not help anybody out because both of those things are true. So here's my issue with Dave Roberts. It's the absolute mismanagement of the bench. Okay, so let me walk you through how the Dodgers got to a place where in a game going to extra innings, they had 0 bench bats available going into the 10th inning, and Clayton Kershaw was forced to bat. They intentionally walked 2 of the Dodgers' only good hitters because they knew Kershaw had to bat next. So here's how we get there. Bottom of the 6th, Dodgers are up 7-1. Chris Taylor had just hit a home run. The next player up is Matt Beatty. A.J. Pollock pinch hits for Matt Beatty. On the surface, I don't have any issue with this one. It's weird to do position for position, but at the same time, you're up 7-1. It's the bottom of the 6th. You're not expecting this game to get to extra innings yet, so I'm okay with that. Okay, now fast forward, bottom of the 8th. It's now 7-5. Will Smith pinch hits for Victor Gonzalez with Chris Taylor on third. Will Smith gets intentionally walked. Again, you're pinch hitting for the pitcher. I'm not going to question that. I love that they brought Will Smith in with a guy on third. Maybe they could have foreseen that there was going to be an intentional walk, but whatever. You take your chances there. Now, why is Will Smith not staying in the game? Can someone please explain to me why Will Smith pinch hits in a game and doesn't stay in? Like, this is his first pinch hit appearance of the entire season, by the way. But if we're so freaked out about the two catcher thing, and then you let Will Smith hit, which I'm obviously thrilled about, why doesn't he stay in the game? Austin Barnes had to come up and hit twice more in huge spots, one of which was a single. Shout out to Austin Barnes, 2 singles, both 65-mile-an-hour exit velocity.
The same exact spot.
So shout out to him. But why does Will Smith not stay in the game? Beside the point. Next up, right after Will Smith is pinch hits for the pitcher, Luke Raley is due up. And Dave Roberts pinch hits DJ Peters for Luke Raley. Luke Raley is better than DJ Peters. Luke Raley is better than DJ Peters. My dog is fired up. My dog agrees completely. DJ Peters strikes out every time he's up. We like DJ Peters as a prospect. It has not been good for him. So he pinch hits DJ Peters for Luke Raley. Okay, now the bottom of the ninth. It's now tied 7-7. Austin Barnes is on first. Sheldon Noisy is due up. Who, by the way, homered in this game. Edwin Rios, by the way, 0 for 16 on the season.
Yeah. And also Sheldon Noisy also homered the other night off of the relief pitcher that was in the game at the time.
So the Dodgers go to their last bench bat available to pinch hit for a guy who is a better hitter, right? Rios is like 0 for 16 in an 0 for 16 slump. So all of this gets to a point where the Dodgers in the bottom of the 10th have the bases loaded and Clayton Kershaw up because they have nobody else. So they hit for the pitcher one time. The Dodgers pinch hit for their pitcher one time with a position player. 3 times they took a position player out in order to put a different position player in. And I would argue twice they put the worst position player in exchange for the better. Absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And the Padres, like, to not foresee how things were going to play out in the 10th. Like, to take Rios out in a tie game and to say, oh, well, like, it was as if they didn't expect the game to go to extra innings when it's tied in the 9th inning. So, I mean, I don't know your take on all this. It's mind-blowing to me. I didn't get to watch the whole game live. I turned it on late. I got to see the Rios thing, and I was like, Noisy is better than Rios, let alone anything else going on, let alone if he's your best last hitter or whatever. Noisy is better than Rios. None of this makes sense to me. It's not the absolute reason they lost, but the run differential between Rios batting for Kershaw in the 10th, Noisy batting for Rios in the 9th, that's a significant thing. That obviously would have changed the odds of the Dodgers winning this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let me go back even further. I mean, we talk about the Will Smith, Austin Barnes thing, plenty, so I'm not going to go too long. But why wasn't Will Smith starting the game? When you have so many guys are injured, you see what the bottom of the Dodgers lineup looks like.
It's a great
you
point.
have a healthy, good player just sitting on the bench. Like, why is he not in the lineup? That lengthens your lineup a little bit. Like, it wasn't like Kershaw was pitching. It's Dustin May who has been caught by Will Smith for most of his outings. So why wasn't Will Smith starting the game? And then I agree with you. Fine, if you start Barnes, but once Dustin May's out of the game, why not bringing Smith there? And then he's in this game, he still would have got 3 at bats probably, and that could have changed the game. And then I'm also with you on the taking out Noisy for Rios thing. That just made no sense to me. Like, I don't care about righty lefty necessarily when the lefty hasn't hit a lick all season, and the righty had homered tonight, homered 2 nights ago off the same exact pitcher, and is looking like one of your only guys that could get the job done at the moment, and you just take him out. And then later that leads to, like you said, that leads to them having to use Kershaw because they have no more position players. And with that, they ended up intentionally walking 2 of the Dodgers' good hitters with a runner on third and 1 out to get to Kershaw. Whereas if you have, even though Rios isn't hitting, like, if you have him to pinch hit in that spot, I don't think you're intentionally walking the bases loaded. So that could have cost them the game alone right there. So yeah, I'm with you. Dave Roberts is definitely not, it's okay to criticize him when he's doing things that we don't agree with. I'm with you though, that's not the sole reason why they lost the game. Like, some of those relievers got to be able to get the job done. But yeah, there were definitely some questionable decisions. We've seen in the past, Dave Roberts hasn't exactly been the best at managing his bench and managing his bullpen. which that's also part of the reason I think we were both in favor of the universal DH, because that kind of
Yeah.
some of those decisions are taken out of his hands if there's a DH in there. But I mean, it is what it is. We got to deal with this for at least, the rest of this season. But yeah, neither of us are saying fire Dave Roberts.
Right.
Neither of us are freaking out. But yeah, those are small decisions that in a close game, could be the difference between a win and a
Yeah,
loss.
and I hadn't even thought about, I guess I had just become so conditioned to Austin Barnes is going to start every once in a while. But you make a great
Yeah.
point. If you want to do that when everyone is fully healthy, it's one thing. But
Yeah.
when you're without Bellinger and you're without Taylor or McKinstry and you're without Lux, by the way, they had an off day on Wednesday. So we're talking about like he had only played, what was it, twice in the previous 4 days. So
Right.
like all of it, I agree with you. That I think is a great point. And it just is comical the way things work out. Austin Barnes' first 3 at bats were all with the bases loaded.
All of them.
All of them. And he gets a 65-mile-an-hour bloop single, and then he gets 2 outs and strands the bases loaded twice. So you might say, oh, it's a little thing. What's the run expectancy with Austin Barnes at the plate and the bases loaded versus Will Smith? And you might say, oh, it's small. Well, now multiply it by 3, and it's not so small anymore. Not to mention, and you just add these all up,
Yeah.
right? Like Rayleigh might have a slightly higher run expectancy than Peters. Noisy might have a slightly higher run expectancy than Rios. Rios definitely has a larger run expectancy than Kershaw, right? They're not bringing 5 infielders in to face Edwin Rios, even if they walk the bases loaded to get to him. Although I agree, there's no way they do that. We get a chance with Muncy. We get a chance with Taylor. And even if Rios does come up with the bases loaded, they're not putting 5 infielders in. The whole thing opens up. A ton of different stuff is in play. And so, again, I don't want to overreact, but this is a theme. This is something that is not the first time we've seen something like this. And again, I'll give him some grace when it's a 7-1 game. But when it's 7-5 in the bottom of the 8th, you've got to start doing things differently. He pinch hit 3 times in the 8th and 9th innings to completely drain his bench in a game you knew you were going to extra innings, in which your pitcher was going to be like the 4th guy due up in the next at bat. All that said, I actually thought Kershaw was going to win the game, if I'm being perfectly honest. I would probably take Kershaw over a couple of the guys we just mentioned. So, all that to say, rough series for the Dodgers. They're still in first place. It is a 1-game lead over the Giants, 3-game lead over the Padres. They still have the best record in the National League. Things are about to get. The Padres are the second best team in baseball, I think. I think you agree with that. And so, having played 7 out of their last 9 against the second best team in baseball, there's a reason why they might not have looked as good as we had hoped that they would look. So, let's move along then to stock up and stock down. Again, this is looking at the last couple weeks, however you want to stretch it. But from your perspective, Daniel, let's get a couple guys stock up and a couple guys stock down.
Yeah, my first guy stock up is Dustin May. He's just been awesome.
Yeah.
We talked all offseason about how he needs to develop that third pitch. He needs to throw that curveball more, and that'll lead to more strikeouts. He had probably the lowest strikeout rate in all of baseball last year. I think it was like 5.79 strikeouts per 9 innings, so somewhere in that range of 6 strikeouts per 9. This year he's up to like 13 strikeouts per 9. He's striking out everyone. He struck out a career high. I don't remember if it was 10 or 11 last night. But he was awesome. He was going to that curveball a lot, and that just shows how much that could open up for him. Like when he's throwing a curveball at 87, that makes the sinker at 99 look like it's 103. So he's looked great. All season, really. I mean, yesterday was his best outing, and that's why I have him on stock up. But he's been really good to start the year, and as has pretty much the whole starting rotation for the Dodgers.
Yeah, I owe Dustin May a slight apology. I mentioned on our Friday show that I thought the Padres had a pitching advantage on Sunday, mostly because of how good Musgrove had been. I was clearly wrong. Dustin May far, far, far better than Musgrove was yesterday. So apologies to him. Go to Pitching Ninja on Twitter and watch the overlay of his breaking ball versus his sinker. I don't know how anybody hits it. This was the best start of his career, considering all things, length, strikeouts, opponent, etc. He had 13 whiffs on Sunday, a 35% whiff rate, which is elite. He had 10 strikeouts to just 1 walk. Again, that's a big thing for him, is throwing strikes. He threw 61 strikes on 93 pitches. 32 strikeouts to 5 walks on the regular season. I think that's the biggest number for me. So I'll piggyback with you and agree that Dustin May gets a stock up from me as well. Who you got next?
My second stock up, I'm going to go Sheldon Noisy here. I mean, we talked about him a little already, but I'm not going to lie. I didn't expect much from him when the Dodgers called him up. I don't know a whole lot about the guy, but hey, in limited at bats against the Padres. He hit 2 home runs. Unfortunately, he was up in another big spot in the first game of this series and hit an absolute
Yeah.
rocket right at Cronenworth for a double play. That was unfortunate, but he hit the ball hard. He's taken a lot of good at bats, and I think, we got Gavin Lux coming back either today or tomorrow, or whenever, and I think it probably would have been Sheldon Noisy, getting optioned just because they're both infielders. But I think now Sheldon Noisy has kind of
Yeah.
played himself into sticking around, considering what the other bench guys have done
Yeah.
as of late. So yeah, I mean, I still don't expect him to be much more than a bench bat. But if the Dodgers could have a solid bench bat right now, that's absolutely massive.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally agree. Noisy's been impressive. And like you said, I mean, if he gets sent down, we've got issues because there's 3 guys that are far worse for him that are currently sitting on the bench. I'll go stock down. It's a guy you mentioned, Brusdar Graterol. I understand that he's just coming back, etc., etc. He's faced 8 batters. He's only gotten 3 outs. He has an ERA of 27. He's allowed 3 hits, 2 walks, and just 1 strikeout. I guess my concern with Gratterall is that in people's mind, they see the 101-mile-an-hour fastball and they just assume that he's an elite relief pitcher. He hasn't actually really proven yet that he's as good as his stuff seems to be. We've seen Dustin May put things together. I understand that he missed spring training and is coming along, but these games count. These are meaningful games. It is against the Padres, and so disappointing to me how bad he's been. It's one thing to be rusty. I understand that. 27.0 ERA is more than rusty to me. So I'll be curious to see. I mean, the Dodgers don't have a ton of guys behind him. Like if Dennis Santana were pitching well and some of these other guys at the alternate site, maybe we get a Ryan Pepio signing here pretty soon. We'll see. But part of me just wonders, I get it's spring training mode, but then maybe send him to the alternate site and let him get reps there because so far it's been really ugly for Gratterall.
Yeah, I definitely don't. I mean, I don't think it's smart to put him in high leverage
Yeah.
situations right now. I don't know if the situation he was in was high leverage because it was like a 7-3 game at the time or something like that. So it wasn't exactly like a 1-run game or anything. But yeah, you're right. They put him in to face the top of the Padres lineup. And this is a guy who hasn't really, and it's the second time they've done it, by the way. They did it last week too, and he hasn't really pitched at all. So you can't fault him there. But I agree. His stuff, hasn't looked up to speed yet. That could change. Who knows? But I think he still has some development to do. He's only 22 years old. Similar to May, he's got to work on that slider.
Yeah.
He needs another pitch. Like when you have, a filthy slider, that makes the 101 fastball look, so much better.
Totally.
Right now, all you got to do is sit on his fastball. And even though 100 is still 100, like when you're in the big leagues, you could hit 100. So he needs something else there. That may take some time. He's similar to May. He hasn't really struck anyone out in his career, and which is kind of surprising considering the stuff, but it just goes to show he has some development to do. So I'm not going to get on him too much, but yeah, he hasn't been great. He definitely would hope he'd be better.
Yeah.
And you hope with a few more outings, he could kind of round into form. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Stock down for you. Who you got?
My stock down is a guy we've also talked about, Edwin Rios. He just has not looked like himself at all at the plate this year. And he just looks lost. Like you could see it in his head. Like I don't know if he's thinking too much, if he's thinking not enough. I don't know what's going on there, but it's clearly not working. He came up in some big spots where all he basically had to do was put the ball in play. You got to be able to do that at this level, in big spots like that, and he wasn't able to. So yeah, I would say it's time to option him, but with the other bench options, I don't even know if you could afford to do that at the moment. But he could definitely, use some more consistent at bats to kind of get back on track here, which he's not getting at the big league level. So I don't know if they're gonna option him. Maybe in a couple weeks if things don't change and other guys are getting healthy, that could be something that's possible. I don't see it happening right now, but yeah, he's looked really bad.
Yeah, it's a helpless feeling, and that like it's once you get down there as a younger guy, you start to doubt, you start to wonder, that kind of thing. He just hasn't had enough reps to believe necessarily he's going to get himself out of it. So definitely curious to see how that one plays out. For my last stock down, I'm just going to go the entire top of the Dodgers lineup. This is the OPS of each guy over the last week. Mookie Betts, 664 OPS. Max Muncy, 532 OPS. Max Muncy had a slugging percentage of 0.77 this past week, which is hilarious only
Hey,
because that
he,
means his on-base percentage was 455. So
he walked 5 times yesterday.
unbelievable on-base percentage for Max Muncy. Terrible batting average and slugging percentage. Will Smith, 710 OPS. Corey Seager, 634 OPS. Justin Turner, 571 OPS. When the Bellinger's hurt and Lux is hurt and McKinstry's hurt, Taylor played pretty well, although he missed a bunch of games. Those 5 guys can't be hovering around 650 in the OPS category, especially against a team like the Padres. So that's a stock down for me. I will say, when we talked on Friday, the Dodgers were coming off of a stretch of like 6 games where they were averaging just 2 runs a game, 4 hits a game, striking out 11 times. That did tick up a little bit over the weekend. They score 5 runs and then 7. They average 11 hits a game in both of those two, although they did strike out 16 times on Saturday and another 10 on Sunday. So got to get the strikeouts down, but at least the hits and the runs ticked up a little bit. So that's what we've got for stock up and stock down. Not a great week for stock up and stock down. There are weeks when you and I can't come up with any stock downs. This week was hard to come up with a stock up. Dustin May and Sheldon Noisy, shout out to you for giving us something to talk about. So let's dive into big deal or no deal. And this is probably going to be the longest segment of the night because this is where the most action is at. And we'll start with the obvious one. Trevor Bauer, Fernando Tatis. There's a couple pieces to this. Fernando Tatis takes Bauer deep twice, celebrates, covers the eye as he turns around and rounding first base, does his little stop and stutter step at third base, etc., etc. I'm sure there were Dodger fans that were ticked. There was a part of me that was like, look, I'm all for bat flips and stuff. Maybe turning around on the bases to look at your dugout is a slightly extreme version of that. But hey, I'm not going to complain. I'm pro bat flips. I'm pro celebrating. Bauer comes out after the game, which, as you pointed out on Twitter, anybody who follows Bauer would not have been surprised. But he basically says, good for him. Good for Tatis. The game needs more of this. If you throw at the guy because he does that, then you're soft. That's not me, etc. So we'll start with the celebration piece before we get to the sign stealing piece. Big deal or no deal to you to have a guy as big and as prominent as Bauer saying what he did in response to a guy as big and as prominent as Tatis is?
Yeah, like you said, I wasn't surprised at all by it. Like that was, I mean, he's talked about that in the past and he's been very, I mean, you see him on the mound doing those celebrations, so it'd be very hypocritical for him to get mad at batters. So that didn't surprise me. I really liked what he had to say. For anyone that, hasn't seen it yet, it's on our YouTube page. Good stuff from Bauer there. And I think it's just fun. We're trying to make baseball more fun. This is the it series of this season. Like anytime the Dodgers and Padres are playing, the whole baseball world is tuning in. And that just makes it more fun when guys are celebrating their success. Like you see it in every other sport pretty much. Sometimes you could take it too far and get, a taunting, penalty or a technical foul in basketball. But for the most part, guys celebrate, they have fun. And I didn't think anything, Tatis was trolling Bauer for sure. He was doing his celebrations, but I didn't think he was trying to show him up and be disrespectful. Like, I think he's just a young kid, having fun playing baseball. And I don't mind that at all. I actually enjoy it. Like, I think guys should do that more. Like you said, it was kind of an extreme version, but I don't think there's a line that could be drawn here as long as you're not showing up your opponent. Like all his celebrations, he was looking at his dugout. He wasn't staring at the Dodgers dugout and doing stuff like that. So I didn't have a problem with it. I think it would be pretty soft if Bauer would have took exception. Yeah. So I was definitely glad that he didn't.
Yeah, to me, this is a big deal because of who's involved. I think because of the prominence of this series, because of the prominence of the matchup, because of the prominence that both of these guys have on social media, for Bauer and Tatis to be at the center of, hey, celebration is good for baseball is massive, I think, because I think that's how you shift public perception, is you get guys like Bauer coming out and being very public and saying, hey, pitchers, stop being stupid about this. If a guy hits a home run off you, let him celebrate. If you strike him out, you celebrate. By the way, Bauer's sword celebration, 10 out of 10 on the celebration meter for me. Huge fan of the sword celebration. But that's the thing. That's why I think this is most a big deal, is because who said it. Like, this isn't, Dustin May going out in a post-game press conference and saying, hey, yeah, when Campusano hit a home run off of me, good for him for celebrating. It's Trevor Bauer, arguably the most famous starting pitcher in all of baseball. I'm not saying best, but it's hard to argue that he's not among the most famous because he tries to be most famous. And Tatis, who is probably the most famous, popular baseball player in the entire league, And so for those two guys to be at the middle of it, I think it's a big deal. I think it's great for baseball. I think this is where the world needs to be going in baseball. You want to make the game more fun, allow stuff like this. And it's not Major League Baseball that is or is not allowing it. It's pitchers that have to come around on it. You celebrate,
Right.
you get fired up when you strike a guy out. Let him celebrate and get fired up when he hits a home run off of you. The second piece of this, though, is where it gets a little bit more complicated. Maybe not. In the midst of that, there's video of Tatis peeking back at Will Smith to see the sign. There's a ton of debate. Was he actually stealing the sign? It appears like the sign had already been shown. The flip side is he almost assuredly would have been able to see where Will Smith was setting up. This preceded a slider that was about 4 inches off the plate getting hit out to left center field. What do you make of this? I've heard lots of opinions. Ken Rosenthal had an article on The Athletic. Trevor Bauer basically said, hey, that's Bush League. If that's what was happening, that's Bush League. Dave Roberts came out and said, I haven't seen the video, but if there is, then maybe we'll have to do something about it. They asked, what does that mean? And he's like, no, I'm not talking about, like changing our signs.
Changing up the signs. Yeah.
That's not what I'm talking about. So big deal. I guess break it down for me. On one hand, do you think he did anything wrong? And secondly, how do you think the Dodgers should or should not have responded?
Yeah, I definitely think peeking at signs like that is Bush League. With that being said, I don't know if that's what he was doing. Like, he definitely looked down. It was quick though, and like you said, it was after the sign was given. But with that being said, if he did see the location of where Smith was setting up, that definitely could help a hitter. Yeah. And we saw him pull a pitch that was 6 inches off the plate and hit it out. So, but with that being said, also basically Bauer was pitching him away the whole at bat. Yeah. So. I don't even know why he needed to peek to know that Bauer was pitching away. Like, that's what he's been doing the whole time. But it's definitely Bush League if that's what he was doing. And I don't think throwing at him is a solution. I honestly think the video of that coming out is a solution because now, the Dodgers are aware that it could be happening. Yeah. So now Will Smith is going to be extra careful back there. All you got to do is look up and see, if the batter's looking at you, take a peek at him. Or also you could deke a little bit, you could fake inside and then go outside last minute, stuff like that. You could definitely, that it's never going to happen again. Let me just be clear. Like, now that the Dodgers know it's a possibility, it's not going to happen again. And I feel like Tatis, now that he kind of got caught, I doubt he's going to be doing it again because maybe the Dodgers didn't throw at him. But if he does that to another team, maybe they'll throw at him. Like, I doubt there's a single pitcher in the world that is okay with a batter doing that. So, but I don't know if he, if that's what he was trying to do. It was a very quick video. It was a very quick peek. So I'm not going to be out here accusing guys of straight up sign stealing. With that being said, though, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah, and the Dodgers won on Saturday. So, yes, it went for a home run, but the Dodgers ended up winning the game. Yeah. Ken Rosenthal had a great article. He went and interviewed a few catchers. And, some people pointed out, hey, maybe Rosenthal's not the best person to write this article because him and Bauer aren't exactly on good terms. So, but I think the point of the article, which I think I've heard from many people, is part of this is on Will Smith. Like, regardless of what Tatis does as a catcher, you can't be that quick to move, and you've got to be a little bit more careful. I love Chris Iannetta, I believe it was, who said, if that happened to me, I look right up at the guy and I say, hey, you do that again, you're getting a fastball to the ribs. He goes, that typically sort of takes care of that type of thing. So it is partially on Will Smith, because if he's looking right at Tatis and Tatis makes eye contact, then it gets real awkward real fast, So there's a number of things. I do think Will Smith needs to clear it up. I'm with you. It's one time we've seen this. It was very quick, hard to decipher. It's an awkward movement from Tatis, which makes me think that's what he's doing, because it's not like a natural thing where his eyes go, but it's grainy video, so we'll give him a pass on that. Sticking with big deal or no deal, and Tatis. Big deal or no deal that Tatis goes for 7 home runs in 3 games. This is the best player on the Dodgers' biggest rival. Are you concerned that Tatis has a beat on the Dodgers starting pitching?
Yeah, well, it was 5 home runs, not 7.
Oh, sorry, 5 home runs. You're right.
But look, he's a great player. He's going to get hot at some point. Like, he had started off the season so cold. Like, he came into the series batting like 150 or something. Like, a guy like that's going to break out. I don't think the Dodgers necessarily did a good job of pitching him. Okay. They didn't really bust him inside. They allowed him to get his arms extended, and we saw he was hitting the ball all over the field. He was pulling them to left. Yeah. Left center, right center. He was hitting them everywhere. I mean, he's just a great player. And honestly, when you see a guy is doing that, you can't let him beat you. Yeah. Like, outside of him, there wasn't really anyone on that in that Padres lineup that I would say had a really great
Yeah.
series where it was like, wow, like we can't get that guy out. It was mainly just Tatis. Like Machado had a few hits, Grisham had a few hits, but neither of them were like going off to the extent with Tatis's. But the problem with that is if you're pitching around Tatis, with the way the Dodgers hold runners on, every walk becomes a double or a triple. Like they were
Yeah.
just running all over the bases, so you're kind of in a tough spot. You just got to tip your cap at that point. Like Tatis beat him this week. There's no way around it. He hit 2 homers off arguably the greatest pitcher of this generation. Then he hit 2 more off the reigning Cy Young winner, and then he goes and hits one off Dustin May, who, other than that, was basically unhittable
Yeah.
last night. So you just got to tip your cap. He had a hell of a series. He's not going to do that every series. Like that was historical type stuff he did. So just tip your cap and hope it doesn't happen again.
Well, so I mean, are you concerned about Tatis being able to do this off of Kershaw and off of Bauer and off of May? Because it's one thing if it's like, oh, he had a big day against, he hits one off Kershaw, one off of Jansen, whatever. But like the fact that he hit 5 home runs off of 3 of the Dodgers' 5 starting pitchers, we've seen what Machado has historically done to Bauer and how some guys just seem to have some pitchers' numbers. Is it at all concerning to you who Tatis hit these home runs off? Or do you just say, fluke, move along, nothing to see here?
I mean, let me be clear. Anytime Tatis is on a baseball field against the Dodgers, I'm concerned. Like that's just how good of a player
Yeah.
he is. He could do that at any time, as he showed. But I mean, at a certain extent, it's just like kind of fluky, I guess. Like 5 home runs in 3 games. Like you don't see guys do that very
Yeah.
often. Um, we're just gonna have to wait and see. The Dodgers have gotten him out pretty well in the past, I should say. So like, it's not like he just wears them out forever.
Yeah.
I feel like there's certain guys, mostly former Dodgers, that go to other teams and then just come and wear the Dodgers out. That hasn't been the case outside of this
Yeah.
weekend. But I mean, Tatis is a great player. He's always someone you're going to be concerned about. You just gotta be more careful and pitch him better. Like he probably should have hit a few more. Like
Yeah.
some of those pitches Jimmy Nelson threw to him were right down the middle. We've seen in the past Dennis Santana has thrown pitches right down the
Yeah.
middle to him and got away with it. So they should be happy it wasn't even worse than it was. But yeah, they definitely got to pitch him better. That's one of the top 5, top 3 hitters in the game at this moment. So yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked about, right? Like they saw all of these guys a week ago. That's an advantage to the
Yeah.
hitters more than the pitchers, so something to keep in mind. Okay, next one.
Yeah.
Big deal or no deal, the state of the Dodgers bullpen. Knebel is hurt. Price, again, left last night's game early. Gratterall's struggling. Trinan, 342 batting average against. Kenley Jansen has 7 walks in 9 innings. Jimmy Nelson had 2 earned runs last night, allowing 6 base runners. Victor Gonzalez even 5 walks in 7 innings in addition to 5 hits. I mean, that feels like a big deal. Maybe the question is, how big of a deal is the state of the Dodger bullpen right now?
Yeah, I think it's kind of in the middle. Like it's definitely something, but it's not the end of the world. You like those guys, the guys you just mentioned, those are all their best
Yeah.
guys. You'd like them to be better. Those are the guys you're counting on to get the big outs. And there's been plenty of spots where they have done that, right? Like it's not like they're just blowing games left and right, but they've blown a few a few ones they probably shouldn't have, which is never ideal. But yeah, there's definitely some concern that a lot of these guys aren't looking like their usual selves. The walks are a huge concern. And that also goes back to what I've talked about a bunch of times with they can't hold
Yeah.
runners on. So every time they walk a guy, it could potentially be a double, and then a single ties the game if it's a 1-run game. So that's never ideal. I still think it's early in the season. Like guys will find their form. Guys will get into grooves as the season goes along. But who knows? I think the bullpen is something that could definitely be addressed at the trade deadline. The Dodgers still have plenty of bullets in that farm system to upgrade this team if they want. Relievers are so volatile. You never know what you're going to get. So I think you could get a rental type reliever at the deadline for pretty cheap that could end up being very effective for you. We've seen
Yeah.
the Dodgers do it plenty of times in the past. And another name to keep an eye on is Brandon Morrow, who we haven't seen yet. We'll probably see him later in the season. Who knows if he'll be able to regain his 2017 magic, but if he does or gets anywhere close to it, that's another
Yeah.
good arm you're adding. So I don't think it's a huge concern yet. But yeah, you want these guys to pitch better.
Who do you trust out there right now?
I mean, I still trust Blake Trinan, even though the batting average against him isn't ideal. It's not a ton of hard contact. And we've seen him get out of some big spots. We saw him strike out Tatis and Grisham. the other night to hold on to that lead. So I still trust him. Kenley, oddly enough, has been one of their best guys. I think you got to put him pretty high up right now. I think also a key for him is we've seen him struggle pitching on back-to-back days, and we've seen him have some more success when he gets more rest.
Yeah.
So I think we saw, he pitched Saturday night. He got a 4-out save. Great. And then I think in the past he would have been available to come in Sunday. And they honestly could have used him, but Dave Roberts, to his credit, stayed away from him. They don't want to overuse him this early. So I think Kenley, as long as he's on extra rest, is someone you could trust. But outside of that, there's not many guys. Jimmy Nelson was starting to look good, and then he has a little hiccup last night. David Price was starting to look good, and then has a hiccup last night and is now injured. Who knows how long he'll be out? We'll see. Hopefully it's not serious. Knebel was another guy who you could trust, but is now out for multiple months.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly, the best state for the Dodgers bullpen right now. We haven't seen too many of the lower leverage guys kind of step up, into higher leverage spots like Dennis Santana and those guys. Scott Alexander.
Give the guy a shout out. Give the guy a shout out.
You mentioned him earlier. He's the one who's actually been pretty good. He's a guy who almost didn't make the roster and is now one of their best guys. So yeah, there's not many guys you could trust, but I still think as a whole, once we start facing some weaker opponents, like the Padres, you got to remember they got a very good lineup. They got some good hitters. So once we start facing some weaker opponents, I think we'll see these guys, start to find a groove.
The Treinen thing is hilarious. I like Treinen. I feel like Dodger fans, like when I put up my list and had Treinen, I don't know, below Jansen, I think it was. Like people were like, "Oh, come on, Treinen." I'm like, do people watch? I understand people are watching, but like 342 batting average against. I mean, and the contact is a tick harder. It's not rocket contact, as you point out. It's not like top 5% of the league average exit velocity either. And so I think he's fine. Like, I'm not like throwing in the towel on Blake Treinen altogether, but I do think that maybe he's a tad overrated in the minds of people. And maybe that's just because people are so over Kenley Jansen that they're like, Treinen is the next guy. So it's like, well, we're going to overinflate Treinen to while we push down Jansen. I don't know. But I mean, none of these guys. I'd like to think Victor Gonzalez, but 5 walks in 7 innings, 5 hits in 7 innings. Like, that's terrible. That's like a 1.33 whip. That's terrible. And so, I don't know. I think, when I think to myself, who do I trust? I think Jansen might be the number one guy. And even as somebody who likes Jansen, I've never been Jansen is elite. I've always been like, he's just better than people give him credit for. He's very good, but he's not great. And so I think there is some concern. I think they thought, David Price was turning into somebody. Jimmy Nelson, you hoped. Knebel was the guy that I think you and I probably liked the most. I think I had him number 1 a week ago. And so for him to go down, there's a little concern, realistic concern, because I think there are a lot of these guys that have started to show tendencies, and you could poke holes. Like Victor Gonzalez, it's like, well, yeah, he was great last year in how many innings, though? Very small sample size, like Treinen even, like 3-4, like we know what he is and what he isn't. He's getting up there. He's getting a little bit older, and so there's no guarantee that he's going to just regain the form that he was at his peak. Kenley Jansen is older. Brusdar Graterol has never really proved it. Jimmy Nelson is coming off injuries. I think there are questions with these guys, and so every time they struggle, it makes those questions a little bit louder, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to hold a 7-1 lead. That's what this all comes down to for me. If they close that out, no issues, then we're probably sitting here saying the bullpen is a lot less of a concern than we are now. But when you can't hold a 7-1 lead for 3 innings, that's definitely concerning.
Let's get to the next topic, which I can sense by your comments already are a big deal, which is the stolen bases. And I have to give a shout out. Eric Steven wrote an article over at True Blue LA and was tweeting about some of this, and that's where some of this info came from. The Padres stole 18 bases and 19 tries in 7 games against the Dodgers. The one caught stealing was Clayton Kershaw picking off a runner, which Corey Seager dropped. So basically 19 for 19 on attempted steals in 7 games. He goes on to say, even if you remove the 10 steals of the last 2 games, the Dodgers still lead the league in steals allowed. You were a former pitcher. What's the fix here? I mean, this is absolutely dreadful. And it's not even on the catchers. I mean, Austin Barnes hasn't thrown anyone out, 12 for 12 against him. Will Smith has allowed 14 steals. He's at least thrown a few people out in more innings. But most of the time, you're not looking at the catcher to blame. These guys are already touching second base by the time Barnes lets the ball go.
Yeah. I can't even tell you how many times we've seen, Barnes or Smith just come up quick with a perfect throw and the runner's still safe. Like, they're stealing these on the pitchers, not the catchers, like you just said. It's a huge concern for me. You got to be able to hold runners on. You got to mix up your looks. You got to be quicker to the plate. Like, I feel like And I guess it makes some sense because a lot of the Dodgers pitchers have such great stuff that if they just execute their pitches, like
Yeah.
they'll be fine. They'll get out of it with no damage. But you're not helping yourself out when you walk a guy and then, you're picking your leg up and he's stealing second on you. And then you throw a wild pitch and now he's at third. Like that just makes things so hard.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier in the show, like now other teams have the video on this and they're going to try to do the same thing. Like it's not like the Padres are a really, good running team. I should say that. Like Tatis is really fast. Grisham's really fast. Manny Machado's not really fast, but he's a smart, savvy baseball player. Like he knows when he can take an extra base. And they got a couple other guys like Profar and such who could run a little bit. So the Padres, I'd say, are probably the best base running team in the league, or definitely up there, top 5. So I don't know if every team is going to run the way they did, but teams are definitely going to run on the Dodgers. They know their pitchers are slow to the plate. They know they're not paying too much concern to the runners. So it's definitely something we're going to see, and it's something that needs to be addressed, or else it's just going to happen all year.
I mean, is it as simple as learning a better pickoff, like practicing your pickoff move, basically? I mean, I know Dave Roberts, when he was asked about this, said, hey, we've got to work on an inside move. We got to work on being a little bit more deceptive, etc. At the same time, the pitching has been so great from the starting perspective that you kind of don't really want to mess with a windup or, whatever at the same time. So is it as simple as just being more deceptive as far as your pickoff move?
That helps. I don't think that's the key thing. Like, you're not gonna pick too many guys off, or like you're not gonna get too many guys, taking smaller leads because they're afraid of being picked off. It's the big leagues. Everyone knows how to get back on a pickoff, but you just got to be quicker to the plate. Like every pitcher has a full leg kick and an abbreviated one. Like growing up, you can't just pick up your leg every time, or else your whole life guys are just going to steal on you. Like everyone has some sort of quickened version, and you just got to get to the plate quicker. I mean, there are some circumstances where the runners don't matter as much, but in a 1, 2, 3 run game late, you can't be giving these guys extra bases. We saw that was how they lost. Like Tatis is on second, they allow him to steal third, and then he scores on a sac fly. Like that won them the game right there. That was the difference right there. So you got to be quicker to the plate. There are times when you don't have to be, like I just mentioned, like when it was 7-1, it's probably fine. But once it gets to 7-4, 7-5, now you got to really buckle down and keep if you walk a guy, let's keep him on first so the double plays in order, stuff like that.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, the part of the reason this is such a big deal is because if your number one rival right now is the Padres, if that's your biggest competition, this is a team that is built to run. So when Clevenger is on the mound in the 10th inning and they steal second and third without even getting a throw, that tells you everything that's a problem. And you were tweeting about it, and I joked. I said, Clevenger's not even the worst guy out there. I think Jansen's had like 45 consecutive stolen bases successful against him. He doesn't even try. Why more teams don't steal second is beyond me. That book has been out there, but it's definitely something to monitor. I think Kershaw and Urias, obviously, as lefties. Urias historically has been really good, has a great pickoff move. Kershaw, I think, has 3 steals allowed, but he's also, I think, picked off 2 guys at the same time. So aside from those 2, the numbers are really, really bleak. So something to watch moving forward.
And let me just say on the other side of this, the Dodgers do absolutely 0 running or 0 small ball. Like I think they should do more. Like when Mookie gets on first, he should be stealing second almost every time. Like, he's going to get out sometimes, but 80% of the time he's going to be safe. And in the right situation, that could give you a run. And as far as like small ball goes, like when a guy like Edwin Rios, he's struggling at the plate. Everyone knows it. He knows it. He comes up first and second, no outs. Why not put a bunt down there? We talked about on our post-game show about how Luke Raley, when the team was struggling against Yu Darvish, he put down a perfect bunt single, and we love that. Like, why not do that more when you're struggling to hit? Like, I feel like even that, just getting that bunt down, that could do something for your confidence, and maybe the next at bat you come up and get a hit, like stuff like that. Like the Dodgers, they just weren't playing good baseball, whereas the Padres were, and that was the difference in the series.
Yeah, and we're not advocating for, hey, bunt all the time, bunt more, but it's hey, when you suck, like if you're 0 for your last 18, put a bunt down. Like just put a bunt down. Okay, couple more here. Gavin Lux due back this week. I think you said maybe even today. Big deal or no deal, Gavin Lux coming back. He has struggled this year, but big deal or no deal?
Yeah, he hasn't been great, but I think it's a big deal just in the sense of you're getting him and you're replacing him with or you're taking out the last guy on the roster who, if I had to guess, I'd say it was DJ Peters who as bad as Rios has been, DJ Peters was worse
Yeah.
this weekend. So I think it's a big deal in that sense. You're getting one of your main guys back in the lineup. He could do damage at the bottom of that lineup. Like you said, he hasn't been hitting, but he's a guy who can get hot at any time. And I think overall we've liked his approach at the plate better this season compared to last year. So I think it's a big deal getting Lux back. Hopefully he's healthy and it's not, his injury's not any concern moving forward. But yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, Lux has struggled. 551 OPS on the season. Obviously, had a great spring training. He has been great defensively. I think it's exactly what you said. It's not so much Lux himself as it is who he's replacing. The gap between Lux and DJ Peters, who's 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts in his career, that's the difference, right? It's that Lux pencils into second base, and now maybe Chris Taylor goes out to left field, and then A.J. Pollock is now your bat off of the bench instead of Luke Raley or instead of Matt Beatty or whoever it is. So I'm with you on that. I think it's a big deal. And I mean, you and I have high expectations for him. So I would expect that 551 OPS starts to climb pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Last one here. Big deal or no deal? The Dodger dogs are no longer from Farmer John. Bill Shaken of the LA Times had an article today. 2019 was the last year of Farmer John Dodger dogs. The Dodgers do own the trademark, though, so the term Dodger dog is going nowhere. They will just not be Farmer John dogs starting this season. Big deal or no deal to you? As you were eating your Dodger dog yesterday, Daniel, was this a big deal to you?
I had two, and I didn't really notice a difference. I'm not gonna lie, Dodger dogs aren't the best, hot dog in the world. They're not. I don't think they're bad, but they're just an average hot dog as far as I'm concerned. So this isn't a huge deal. I will say the big deal is that I got a chance to go to the stadium for the first time last night, and I saw the different food options they have. In center field, they built this whole like hangout type area for people who really don't care about the game as much. I think it's a cool addition, but there's a lot of different food options there now. Like they got California Pizza Kitchen back as their pizza. They got Shake Shack. They got, Dunkin' Donuts coffee and stuff like that. So I think that's the big deal, is that there's just a lot of good food options now at Dodger Stadium, which I think in the past has been kind of an issue. Like if you compare it to other stadiums, there's a lot of other places that have a lot better options.
So still went with 2 Dodger dogs, though. All these new options, and Daniel's still going for 2 average Dodger dogs.
The last time I had a Dodger dog was September 2019. Okay. So I had to, my first time back, I had to get some Dodger dogs. But as I go to more games, I'll definitely explore the other options.
You're not doing the DoorDash? You can get the Dodger Stadium food delivered to your house? That's not on the agenda?
No, that is not on the agenda.
I laugh every time. I'm like, I'd probably do it once. Obviously, I live in Oregon, not available up here, but I crack up. I'm like, hey, you know what? That'd be fun. Get some Dodger dogs for a game or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'll say it softly, but I'm with you. I mean, I think Dodger dogs are fine. People come, they're like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I like Costco hot dogs better than I like Dodger dog hot dogs. So anyways, but good to hear that you can't tell the difference. The Dodgers have said, hey, we're going to try and make it taste the exact same. Maybe they should improve it. I don't know, but I guess that maybe controversial. All right, we got a couple mailbag questions we'll get to here as we close out. We got about 5 minutes left. Laura Lara says, is it time to sub Keibert Ruiz in for Edwin Rios? I'll follow up. Basically, what do we do with Edwin Rios? Does he need to be sent down? Does he need to sort of do there need to be drastic changes, or do you just let him ride this out?
I think in a perfect world, he would be sent down. Like if everyone's healthy, you got other bench options, he would be sent down. I don't know if the Dodgers can afford to right now, considering how the other bench options have looked. Like I still think he's better than DJ Peters and Luke Raley at this point in time. Not much better, but I still think he's a better option there. But in a perfect world, you'd be able to send him down. He'd go to the alternate side, or whenever the minor league season starts, he'd go to AAA, and he'd be able to get 4 or 5 at bats a day. And right now he's just slumping, and eventually he's going to come out of it. Like he's not going to bat, .076 with, striking out 80% of the time the whole season. But right now it's clear that he's struggling. He could use kind of a reset. He could use, just some sort of change. It's all, whatever he's doing now is not working. So in a perfect world, you send him down, but I just don't know if that's feasible at the moment. Maybe in a week or two, if he doesn't pick it up and other guys get healthy.
Well, let me ask you this, because obviously both you and I are very pro Keibert Ruiz being on the roster for 100 different reasons. The argument against, I was talking to Matt Moreno about this briefly, and his argument is, hey, what Dave Roberts has said is that, or at least maybe it's what he thinks Dave Roberts would say is they want regular at-bats, that bringing Ruiz up to not hit, et cetera, et cetera. That's not a big deal to me. Like, I just write that off and say, that's really nice in a perfect world, but like the Dodger bench sucks. and Keibert Ruiz would immediately become probably the second best hitter on their bench, as is, let alone all the opportunities he opens up for Will Smith as a pinch hitter, etc. So to me, I say, I understand, I hear, we don't live in a perfect world. The Dodgers need help, and Ruiz is the best option. What do you say to that? I mean, he's a young guy, obviously. So do the at-bats in the alternate site matter more than actually helping the Dodgers win baseball games right now?
I see both sides of it. Like when it comes to a guy like Ruiz, he's still a top prospect in the organization. I still think you think long term with a guy like that. Like you still see this guy as potentially your catcher of the future, and you want him to continue his development. Whereas these April games, if you lose a few of them because your bench sucks, like it's not the
Yeah.
end of the world. Like you're still gonna be okay. With that being said, like I see what you're saying too. Like the Dodgers bench is just awful, and I do think having Ruiz on the roster frees a lot of things up. Whereas you could use Will Smith as a pinch hitter, you could even use Ruiz as a
Yeah.
pinch hitter, and he's a better options than a lot of other guys. Or you could have him come in as a defensive replacement late if you need it. He's a good defender by all accounts. So I see both sides. I definitely think right now the minor league season hasn't started yet. You could get him, simulated game type at bats
Exactly.
before the games, and then he could sit on the bench during the games. And if you need him, you need him. And then, once everyone gets healthy, the AAA season starting, then maybe you could send him back down when your bench is in a better place. But I think right now he could be doing everything he's doing at the
Yeah.
alternate site here with the big league team, and that just adds another better option for you off the bench when you have zero good options at the
Well,
moment.
and that's the thing I'm thinking of. Like when you go on the road, you bring a taxi squad. So you've got guys like Clevenger, or Alex Vesia, or whoever, Mitch White, whoever the pitcher is that's on your taxi squad. Just let him give Ruiz 4 at
Yeah,
bats before the game. I mean, that's
exactly.
basically what you're getting at. So it doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. We need to start a petition. I'm trying to get Matt to ask Dave Roberts why Keibert Ruiz hasn't been called up. Matt won't ask the question yet. So anybody wants to put some social media pressure on at M Moreno, feel free to send that out. Okay. Second question here. This is from Ismail Rivera. With Price, Gonsolin, Knebel going down, obviously we don't know Price, the extent of the injury. Should LA explore trading for a starting pitcher or a relief pitcher? Their depth is really being challenged right now on both sides of the diamond. He mentions Keibert Ruiz as a trade chip. He also says Julio to the bullpen. I'm going to disagree entirely on
No,
that. I think starting pitching wise,
no.
we're fine. But should you kind of hinted at this? Should the Dodgers be exploring trading for a relief pitcher right now?
I don't know about right now. I think it's something they'll definitely consider later in the season. I still think right now I mentioned the volatility of relievers. You don't really know right now
Yeah.
what relievers are going to be good this season and what aren't. Like the season just started 2 weeks ago. I think once June comes, once July comes, you have a better sense of who's available on the trade market. Like I don't know. Even the bad teams right now, I don't think they're in full on
Right.
sell mode just
Right.
yet on April 26th. So I don't even know. Even if you wanted to make a trade, I don't know if you could. But I think once the deadline gets closer, you'll know who's available, who's good, who's going to cost what. Which of your prospects are having good years and maybe their value goes up, stuff like that. Like I still think it's too early
Yeah.
to talk about trades, but I'm definitely with him in that the current state of the bullpen isn't great. You just gotta hope things turn around. Guys power through these struggles and see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, to your point, any relief pitcher that we want is not currently available for trade. Like
Yeah,
there is no team in the league that is already about to sell, and maybe no team in the league is stretched. Maybe the Rockies, who just got rid of their general manager. Maybe there's some teams like that who have no
yeah,
expectations for the season. But I think with the Dodgers, it's not just, hey, we're looking for warm bodies. You're looking for, like, if the Dodgers go and trade for somebody, it's probably going to be a high leverage guy. And high leverage guys just aren't available at the moment. And so I think they're going
right.
to have to wait that one out. I do agree with you. Let's let this play out for a couple months and see what happens. Is Victor Gonzalez, does he prove that last year was the real deal? Or does he prove, hey, you know what? He's a fine relief pitcher, but he's not high leverage. What does Scott Alexander give you? He's been pitching really, really well. Is that a fluke? He touched 97 on Friday, and we're both like, whoa, where did that come from? Maybe the gun was a little hot. But just let the highs and lows right out. What is Kenley Jansen, right? Like once these guys get, what does Gratterall give you once he's a little bit more healthy? So I think we're with you, Ismail. We definitely think the bullpen is going to be the number one trade area, with the bench probably a close second, depending on what happens when everybody gets healthy. Because we keep saying when everybody gets healthy, there's no sure thing. Right now, Lux, McKinstry, and Bellinger being hurt. That's an extreme version. But you could probably count on one of your top 10 hitters sort of
Yeah.
perpetually being hurt. And so
Yeah.
It's not like the Dodgers have one bad bench hitter. They've got 3 or 4, so that's a problem. But definitely something to watch as we go forward. And is Ruiz a trade chip is an interesting question. I think we've kind of hinted at that. Austin Barnes hasn't been very good. Obviously, he's the Kershaw catcher, and so you have to imagine he's sticking around. And if that's the case, if you won't bring him up to be a pinch hitter, maybe Ruiz's value is as a pinch hitter. Like maybe that's the value. He is the bench bat that is better than all the rest of these guys. I don't know. Some people joked about signing David Freese out of retirement. And another person I think responded saying he was at a game drinking a beer or something. So maybe that's not exactly what we're looking for there. But
hey, that guy could get out of bed and hit.
That's probably true. It's probably true.
I don't think he's an option though. Let me just say that.
Yeah. So we'll see. Definitely appreciate. So, well, hey, that's what we've got. Again, rough week for the Dodgers. They go 2-4. We had hoped for a 4-2. They played the Reds and then the Brewers this upcoming week. We don't have time to preview those series, but hopefully they can get back on track against Cincinnati and then Milwaukee. They're facing the heart of the rotation, one of the best, second best rotation in baseball, according to Britt Giroli, who we interviewed last week from The Athletic. So is not getting any easier for the Dodgers. Maybe the Reds are a slight reprieve, but then they have to go play the Brewers, and that's not going to be everything we're hoping for. So we'll see what happens. We appreciate you watching. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest. Dodger Blue 1958 everywhere on social media. Make sure you're subscribed and ring the notification bell here. We've got lots of videos that come out every week. Rob and I will be back on Thursday doing a preview of that Brewers series, so that should be good as well. That's Daniel Starkin. I'm Jeff Spiegel. We appreciate you watching. As always, the words of Vince Scully taking us home.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.